Good evening, time being 7 o'clock. I call the February 25th Police Station Building Committee meeting to order. First thing, note to all residents, all citizens are welcome to attend public meetings in person. To view the live meeting remotely, citizens are encouraged to watch the live stream on the Franklin Town Hall TV YouTube channel or the live broadcast on Comcast Channel 9 and Verizon Channel 29. Meetings are also archived by Franklin TV and on the Franklin Town Hall TV YouTube channel and shown on repeat on Comcast Channel 9 and Verizon Channel 29 for those who missed the live meeting. To listen to the meeting remotely, citizens may call in using this number, 929-205-6099. This will not permit participation in the meeting. To participate in the meeting, citizens are able to join a Zoom webinar using the information. The webinar ID is number is 811-5767-2499. Then you need to hit the pound sign. `Once again, the Zoom ID is 811-5767-2499 pound. Any participants who wish to speak during the webinar must enter their full name and email address when joining the webinar. All participants will be automatically muted upon the webinar. In order to speak, participants who have entered full name and email address will need to select the raise hand function to request to be unmuted. All speakers will be required to state their full name and street address before commenting. Okay, we'll move right into the agenda. First item on the agenda is the introduction of Joe CHA and Castle Blues Associates team. Joe, you want to take the lead?
Yeah, thank you very much. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Joe Lynch with CHA Consulting. I'll be acting as a project manager on behalf of the city for the new potential police station in the city of Franklin. I'm joined tonight by the KBA architecture team. We've already started to work on potential project coming up, looking at the wants and needs for the city and what we have potential to do moving forward. As we move forward tonight, we're going to show you the newly launched website, as well as get into our standard practices and what we would be doing as we would work through site selection and feasibility for one of these new potential sites. With that said, I'll introduce the KBA team.
Sure. I'll start. Todd Costa from Castle Blues Associates. I'm the excuse me, the principal that leads the public safety studio for KBA. To my left is your project manager, primary contact, Sean Schmiegel. And to my right is Eric Royce, who is the lead landscape architect.
So we're just going to touch it a little bit. I know most of this is from what our interview was a few months back, but we're just going to touch on it lightly, just a refresher of what we do. I'll let Todd kind of express that.
Sure. So our mission is using design to elevate environments and experiences of those that occupy our buildings, right? Through our values of authenticity, teamwork, dedication, integrity, and innovation. And we want to bring that to every meeting, every point, and put it into the buildings that we are working to design with you, obviously. KBA, the public safety side of things, actually KBA General, was founded in 1964. We decided at that point in time to specialize in public safety design. We went through as part of the interview. So just to kind of accelerate that, public safety design is one branch of two major legs in the company, K-12, which we've worked with the community here on a school, as well as public safety side. And with that, we brought in to make sure that our approach is holistic from outside to inside and everything in between. We brought interior design in-house as well as landscape architecture. It's critical, especially when we're looking at a police station, for CPTED integration, that security by design, making sure that the front of the building is welcoming but safe. You can skip over this one. This is our team, and then kind of where we've worked recently in some of the communities that are similar in size to Franklin here. So, go ahead.
So, as Todd noted, definitely collaboration with the department, collaboration with the town, or with the city. So really, we're listening, we're asking many questions, we're working with the facilities department, and really just collecting as much data as possible so that we can start informing the town, the city as quickly and as soon as possible. And the transparency is really what we strive for, just to keep everybody posted of our process and where we are, where we're heading. So internal communication with the departments, with the city, the facilities department, and really just keeping the progress moving as fluid as possible so that we can inform the community and outreach as often as possible. So really where we are today is, as it was noted in the agenda, I'm kind of jumping around a little bit on this, but so
Okay.
we've been working currently. We have a draft website, if you will, that we're almost ready to launch, but we're working with just getting the correct information on there so that and I'll be able to go through it in here in a few moments, but really just we have a draft, have some comments, review it with yourselves, review it with the facilities department, and really get the correct information out there so that there are less questions to be presented or discussed. So we're going through that, and then as that process continues, we'll be working, with social media, with yourselves, with the police department for Facebook, Instagram, whatever it may be, and just kind of keep the fluid dialogue together and keeping it the dialogue, so we're all on the same page. So as I noted, we do have a draft website. I'll jump into that in a few moments, but after I go through all this, so this is just a quick snippet of the homepage. Town of Franklin, and obviously, I'll get into a little more detail, but we have more information.
Just so, everybody, we're a city known as the town of Franklin. So city and town doesn't matter.
Okay.
It'll work.
So we could briefly touch into our process. So we've already sat with the police department. We've had, it was probably a good 2.5, 3 hour meeting, walk through many of the spaces, program needs, program requirements, not only for today's necessities, but also growing into the future. So with that, we have some back and forth dialogue with the police department on some of those needs, some of those requirements. So we have a preliminary square footage already identified, which we're starting to look at the proposed sites that which will come up in a few moments here. But right now we're looking at approximately about a 38,000 square foot building to holster all the program needs, and then some additional storage needs of an outbuilding and whatnot. So we're really at that stage of not identifying sites, but reviewing the sites and understanding how this program will fit on one of these properties that we're currently reviewing and assessing. So we have that program. So that's what we're really utilizing right now for these site analyses that Eric and his team have been working on. So the 3 sites that we've been charged with looking at is the Davis Thayer site, the Parmenter site, and then there was a residential site off of Grove Street, I believe is the name of the street. So it was a small site that we were just looking at that was presented, and we'll get into that just here shortly. So I'll pass it over to Eric.
So as the landscape architect on the team, I'm going to be one of the first ones that we're interacting with you on a regular basis in looking at these 3 sites. So we were assigned to look at 3 sites, and in the programming sessions that we've already had with the department, we've come up with, I believe, a 3-story scheme for a police building. So we start looking, when we first start looking at the sites, the first thing we do is we look at a fit study. Does the building fit on the site? How does the building fit on the site with regards to grading and any constraints that might be on the site? And then we start looking at all the programming as far as parking, like how many parking spaces do you need for patrol? How many parking spaces do you need in your secure patrol area? Where's your public entry gonna be? Which street it's gonna be off of? How you're gonna get in and out. We always like to have 2 entrances in and out, especially for patrol, in case one gets blocked. So we look at all that. That's the first thing we look at. And that's what you're seeing in front of you now for the 3 sites. So we looked at Davis Thayer, West Central and Union Street, currently a school site. It's about 3.4 acres, which is that's kind of the minimum acreage that we look at for a usable site for a police station of this size especially. There's no apparent environmental constraints on the site. We don't see any flood zones. We haven't seen any wetlands or anything like that that would make the site less viable. We're still doing the research. We still have a lot of background stuff to do on these, but it's just the initial 10,000 foot look at the site and fit study. It seems like it'll fit here, but there might be some compromises that need to be made because it's a smaller site. The site's fairly flat, so everything works. You've got an existing school on the site, something needs to be done with that. There's existing playgrounds and existing ball field on the site also, which presumably has to find a home somewhere else if this goes on the site. So those are all some of the issues with Davis Thayer. For the next one, we looked at the Parmenter site, also another school site. The developed area of the site is fairly flat, but it is almost a 20-acre site. A lot of it is undeveloped. It looks like wetlands area. There's probably flood zones in it. There's some nature trails down there. Again, it's a school site, so it's what happens with the school and the programming on site. There's ball fields on the site. There's playgrounds on the site. So what happens to that? But you could see from this picture at the 10,000 foot level, you might be able to save some of that existing building for another use and repurpose it. The end closest to the street, at the corner, probably does need to come down to accommodate all the program we need on the site. But the rest of that building might be able to be repurposed for something. And then the last one is what we call the residential site on Grove Street. This one we don't think is viable. It's very steep. It's got 20 feet of grade from one end to the other. It's got a hill, which is probably rock, that we're looking at. And you can see all these slides are the same scale as far as it. So you can see that this site is tiny compared to the other 2. And this is just 2 acres. We don't think this is viable. There would have to be a lot of compromises made to fit everything on the site that you'd want on a site for a police station. So that's kind of where we started. This is the initial look at the site and the building and how it fits on the sites. We've still got a lot of due diligence to do on each one of them to vet out if there are any environmental issues, building issues with demo, things like that. But that's kind of where we are now with the sites. And they're all 3-story schemes right now.
Part of this study is basically use I know Eric said like a 10,000 foot view. I'm going to go a little higher. It's a satellite view, if you would, where we're looking at same building footprint and how is this affecting not only the environmental, but the potential operational issues for the department, making sure that we're vetting that. And that's all data that we're collecting, if you would, that we're developing into a matrix as part of the analysis that we'll summarize and bring back before the department, before the committee, and say, okay, this is where everything is leading us relative to the information on these 3 sites. And just very much high level. You can't have the 3 bears scenario, right? Goldilocks. Not so comfortable. It may work. It's going to take some effort, and then you get that real. This is very comfortable scenario. So, again, just kind of showing you the process as we're going through it, just to kind of bring you along as we're having meetings with the department and facilities and everybody else to kind of bring everything together.
So concurrently with the site analysis, so as Eric noted, you know, we're with kind of a condensed footprint, having that 3-story structure, right? So, you know, as we're working, you know, the floor plan is really fluid right now. So we're working through adjacencies, you know, where the public entrance is going to be, how the detention area is focused on the site, you know, how we're bringing in the detainees and the prisoners and how they're detained, the whole processing area, and then how public versus private entities are working with each other. So as we get a little bit more of the information identified about the properties, and when one of those properties kind of rises to the top a little bit sooner, we'll really start to hone in on these floor plans and really get a more justifiable footprint and a more, you know, detailed floor plan, so that we can really discuss, you know, the operational plan of how the department will function in a 3-story structure. You know, maybe it's not a full 3-story structure, maybe it'll be partially 3, maybe 2. You know, so that's really where we're heading as of right now, as this site information is coming together. But you know, we're comfortable with the department of the program needs and you know, to make it a fully operational new facility for the future, not only just today, but growing in the next 50 to 75 years.
And part of the process, this process works into the schedule. Once as Todd said, once one of the sites rises to the top, we have to pull a trigger on getting a survey on the site, and we have to pull a trigger on getting geotech, drilling some holes, digging some holes, finding out what's out there. So that's all works into the schedule, and that's one of the reasons we want to get there sooner than later.
So I know that was kind of a quick summary of where we are today. I can back out and open up the draft website, which is not public as of yet, but we're working through that. So as the screenshot that was on the presentation, this is just our homepage. You know, it starts just really talking about the project, talking about the department, and then, you know, some idea or some updates, a project update. So here we can post, you know, when these building committee meetings are, when there's any building tours that may be scheduled through the department, when there might be a public forum, which we're working with, there'll be 1 or 2 or 3 in upcoming months of, again, on a broader range of discussing this process, and once we have more floor plans and more detail to discuss with the community, this will be that homepage to kind of really update everybody through that whole process. That's the about page. Just a little bit more about the department. Items that have already been done. Kind of the process of where you are, how you got to here today. And then starting to identify some of the inadequacies of the current department. Some of the spaces. We're working on photography, working on some videos of the space, which can get posted on here as well. And really just getting into greater detail of each of the different spaces, and photographs will be accompany this information as well. And then just really just kind of identify the process. So anyone from the community can jump on this page and really understand where the community has gone and started and where we're headed. So existing conditions, like I said, there'll be the video when that is completed. We can post this on here. More photography of specific spaces of need, not only need, but of inadequacies of the department, spatial needs, and so really the public can see just real firsthand of those areas. Here, just identifying the team, so the folks that are here today, and then just some links to ourselves. So if anyone has any other questions, or they can reach out to us in that way as well. And then we can post agendas and meeting minutes here, as well as any of the town's websites, or at least link it back to where the other postings are happening. So, so it should be really, hopefully, a one-stop shop for the community to find any information about this project. And then as the site information continues, we'll have each of the sites we just discussed, and if we want to add more or subtract some of this, just supplementing all this information and posting it as it becomes available to us. And then lastly, right now, just some general questions of, you know, the project, you know, what are the needs, you know, so there's not, we're not being bombarded with a bunch of questions, so hopefully we can kind of identify some of those questions and answer them here, so it can be addressed in a simple manner. So, you know, this is kind of like the baseline of how we start with most communities. Obviously, it can be tailored to any way, shape, or form that works for all of you. It's pretty simple to adjust, but obviously as more and more information comes to the table, we're able to post it, you know, and how much or how little, really, what it comes down to. So that's all that we have here for here today. I'm happy to answer any questions going forward.
I guess my first question would be, with the website, what are we looking at for a time frame to at least have the initial information up, but enough information so that we're not getting calls saying, why isn't this there, or why isn't that there, as we generally do. So, what's your thought process?
So I think on our end, the architectural side and the design side and the analysis side, I mean, we're pretty close for the next week or so, you know, to getting that posted. I can't speak necessarily to the video that's started or beginning.
You follow up with
With Steve?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's closed, Jim,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Yeah, we met with Steve yesterday. First of all, I want to shout out to Steve and thank him for all the effort he's going to put into this. I think he's going to do a great job. So we did a preliminary walkthrough yesterday, and he's going to come back with his team to do the actual videotaping. And it's going to take a little time because we have to then do the audio on top of the video. So it's in progress, but I think it's going to take at least a few weeks, if not a little longer, to do that.
And I guess that's kind of where I was headed. I think we would want that information up when we open up that website. So if we have to wait an extra week before the website goes up to at least get that information on it, again, my opinion would be, let's wait until we're able to put that information up. And correct me if I'm wrong, Jamie, or everybody, as we sit here now, we had 3 sites, we're really down to 2 sites because the one is not large enough, it's only 2 acres, plus we would have to buy that site. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Just for the background, I think one of the menu choices up top eventually will be not just existing conditions, but probably a drop-down menu of site evaluation, right? I think it might, yeah, site's right there.
Yeah.
So obviously the Parmenter site's there, and I'm gonna try to get these folks, you know, the deed, the letter from the superintendent, like some of the other background information that I know people are gonna look for in the community. The DT site, we can probably take off the Grove Street one. That was just an offer, by the way, by somebody who sent us an email a couple weeks ago and said, and actually, this is kind of what I wanted to, actually, that leads into the current site, which we still have to evaluate. I know there's not a lot of room, but we do have to evaluate that as if there may be a mix and match here, right? It may not just be one station on one site, it could be a couple sites, I think. This gets back to, I think, the program development that the chief and the deputy and Officer Rosa and the rest of the staff put in down at the station about what it is that we need for the next 50 years. But then I think there's still that other. And, you know, I think, you know, we have to see what the program is of what we need that's defined by the officers, right? And then find out, are there other sites that we haven't looked at yet that fit that need? There could be. We all know Franklin's fairly built out, land is not cheap, but I will say, I'm sure we're going to take a tour to Needham's station. I don't want to be in the position of having to buy 8 or 9, 10 parcels of land to build a station. But Needham did do that, and I believe Shrewsbury might have done that. I think Beverly did that. I think some other communities have purchased multiple sites to get the right site of where they need it to deliver the best response times and things. So I think you got Parmenter, DT, you got the current site, and then you're gonna have other, and I think, you know, we'll probably ask them to just do a quick survey around the town. I do agree on the video. One of the other things we wanted to talk about tonight was the open houses. You know, how many open houses the committee wanted, 2, 3, 4, we're just doing 6 listening sessions. So, you know, I do think that's probably one of the most important things, is getting people into the building. I was down there today for bargaining, and it just, every time I go in, it's just a flashback of reality of why this project is so important. And I know I speak for Andressa, who's nodding her head over here, but she's probably in a closet with a few other people. And in all seriousness, I think the open houses are really important, and I'd like to see those scheduled before the website goes live. You know, and I'll go through with these guys a few other, the agendas and things like that, but I think you're right. You've done this before. You really want to launch it when, you know,
You don't wanna launch it too early, you wanna have enough.
you want to have a lot of meat on the
That
bone.
you can build on, but at least enough information up there so that you're not getting bombarded with.
They did have a feedback piece up, and I said, please take that off until, because everybody's just gonna ask the same questions, and then we've got to figure out a chain of how to respond to those, so, and, yeah.
Chief?
Can we talk about a timeline then tonight?
Yeah,
Oh, we
absolutely.
Because I know a lot of it depends on us, so
Yeah.
not that I'm looking for more work, but we'll get it done. But, you know, depending on what you want, do you want the video to go out around the first time that we start we do a tour? I don't care how many times we want to open house the station, it's really, the video would be for those people that might not be able to make it down there.
Right.
You know, or something, or they can watch it and still come down, and I know, you know Steve, he's gonna do a narrated portion on it that someone can listen to, and then something that they can read,
Yeah,
you know, and everything else, but that's all, I'd like to see if we can get some kind of preliminary timeline from today to when there might even possibly be a vote on a debt exclusion if it was to happen.
I'm looking at right now, you know, we've got budget stuff for 2 or 3 more weeks. There's a bunch of vacations in there. I'm thinking if we did one open house in April, maybe, you'd at least start getting that going. And then really, I think you're in May and June, say you do 3, 4,
3 or 4, I think would be a good number.
you know, at night.
You know, I don't think you need to do more than 4,
Yeah.
but 3 or 4, I think I'd be comfortable with myself. I don't know how everyone.
Yeah, 3 or 4 would be
Yeah.
good.
Just to give everybody a fair opportunity, I think we're gonna have some Saturdays, right?
course.
You know, I
Why
think
not, we're open 24/7, 365, so.
we'll do a 2 AM session
2
for
a.m.
the night owls in time, and the folks will, you know, I mean, I think maybe what I'll ask the chief to do is maybe give us a list of 4 dates through June, through the end of the fiscal year. He can send them to the staff and us, and we'll coordinate those dates. And we'll put them out as posted
I
meetings.
think a couple of Saturdays.
Yeah.
If we're doing 4, 2 Saturdays, I think would be great, and then.
Do it on the last day of school and all the kids. Yeah, we'll try to get some dates from him that fit into the schedules of the training of the officers. I think we're gonna want some of the staff there. And I
In case
think,
there's trouble.
in case there's trouble, maybe trouble elsewhere, but, and then I think we also wanted to get a list of, and these guys can all help, we wanted to know where you wanted to take the committee, if you wanted to do a couple visits to other. I know Needham was on your list,
I'll just-
I know you designed it, so that would be a layout.
They just showed us 5 that they actually designed that are
Yeah.
of similar size. I thought I saw like Beverly, Watertown.
Even a great one that just finished, and it was actually featured in the Law Enforcement Station Design magazine, was Leominster.
Oh, I heard of, yeah.
And we just received,
Wow. It's been a long day.
we just received a award for that project.
Okay. So, Leominster, Needham, and Watertown. I don't mind going to Beverly, especially if it's in July or August, but, you know, it might be a little bit long for everybody to get there. Do you want to do 2 visits, Mr. Chairman, or 3? What do you?
I
Two?
would say, I would say if we schedule 3 and whoever can make whatever. You know, somebody might only be able to make 2 of them, and that's okay.
Yep.
But if we schedule out 3 of them, again, kind of spread out a little bit.
Sure. I'd only ask that, I'm thinking Needham probably went with the higher end stuff for like doorknobs and stuff on the walls and things like that. And maybe some of the other ones went with something that might be a little bit on the lower side. If you could point those, you know, I mean, they're all like Hingham, that pretty, you know, got a good tax base and everything else, but I know that there are different levels.
There is.
You know, and
that's a
we've
good
learned
point.
that, because we've already been to Needham, we've been to Shrewsbury.
Needham actually didn't go top end across the board.
Let's go to Needham.
One that was actually a surprise, and it was the head of facilities for Beverly was very influential with materials selected. So you'll go into the lobby in Beverly, and it actually has, the first time I've done it, but a terrazzo floor in the lobby. Because terrazzo was the only thing that he didn't have to correct or fix or repair in any of the schools. So. put
We
down
very
floor.
much have a proprietary facilities department
And he was very.
that like proprietary items.
And he was very influential in the whole process, because ease of maintenance, longevity, all of that, was critical to him. And then, as such, critical to the mayor as well. So Beverly probably has some of the more exotic materials, if you would, than the majority of the rest of them.
They have a cell.
They do, they have a few.
Oh, that's good. You guys want to see 3? We'll go
Yeah,
through.
I just think if we schedule 3 and then
Yeah.
whatever.
And Beverly also had, just Kevin kind of whispered in our ear, Beverly was also one that put the challenge to us as a group. They wanted to try and achieve net zero. So they wanted to generate enough electricity on site to offset a 24/7 facility, which is very challenging in the light.
For sure.
So we set a plan in place, which majority of it was their parking lot area was going to be covered with solar arrays to keep the cruisers from getting weather on them, keep the personal vehicles from getting weather on them, but more importantly, generate enough electricity through solar to offset the 24/7 facility. And they use geothermal for the entire building as well.
Anybody have any other questions?
Just gonna ask if they
Yeah.
could just, to the chief's point, what do you need the chief to start defining with the deputy and Officer Rosa and the rest of the officers and sergeants? Call volume data, do we need,
They've already asked for this.
what do we, where's the development of what we need? Is that,
We met with them twice
is
already.
that in process, is that done? Maybe just to let the folks, there's a couple of viewers out here that are looking, you know, on Zoom, maybe just give an overview of where you're at with that.
Yeah, they-
Yeah, what's been provided so that people,
So they sent us a questionnaire asking, you know, number of cruises, you know, number of personnel, different divisions, units, you know, things like that. So we provided all that. Then they came for a preliminary meeting, and we kind of went over their first kind of design of what we would need. And then there was a second one, in which was a much longer one, again at the station, where they went through and then came up with like version 2, which I believe is the 37,000 square feet that we're kind of looking at now, which I assumed it would be somewhere between about 37,000 and 40,000 when looking at the comparables of other communities. So we're kind of, I think, putting the virtual goggles on, walking around through the places when we finally, you know, get for flow and that type of thing. Those details will come later, because we don't want any change orders, Mr. Chairman, you know, just to make sure you realize that. But those types of things, yeah, we'll definitely get to, but I think we're, as far as probably the size of the building, for what we need to make sure, you know, for our operations that we see today, and maybe, we don't want to build another station 34 years later. This is the second time we've kind of gone down that road where, you know, the East Street Station was built in 57, we moved out of it in 91, and now we're here, and, you know, it's 34 years later, and we're looking at another one. So that, like, the only questions I was gonna ask was, when you say 3 floors, is that 3 above ground, or is that a basement with 2 above ground?
Our objective is to try and keep everything above ground,
Above ground, okay.
because we've been asked the question many times over, why not a basement? The basement's very cost effective. It is cost effective when you're talking about a residence, when you're talking about a commercial facility like this, we're another, 4 or 5 feet below the 8-foot mark. And you're excavating an awful lot, so they become very cost ineffective in that manner. So we try and keep everything above ground, just keep it very simple. There's other challenges with basements when you get into public safety facilities as well. Excuse me. Just to elaborate a little bit on what the chief was talking about with the design, we start and we have a very methodical process, and the design that the chief was alluding to is, right now it's numbers. We're in the spreadsheet form where we're talking what's the ideal area for an office, what's the ideal area for the roll call, number of cells, things of that nature. All that's coming together in a database that we can talk about each individual room. That all is assembled with a net to gross factor. Net to gross is programmed area, office space, to add walls in circulation corridor for those who don't know that. And then now we're at that point where we're going to start to take those pieces and parts as larger groups, so the detectives division, the patrol division, the administration, and put them together as larger group elements to make sure that we're getting the right relationships that are going to work with the way that the department wants to be organized and they want to flow through the building. Keeping in mind, from an administration point, the report to shift and get out on the road is an important factor, right? They're in the line, I may have said this in the interview, they're in the business of patrolling the streets, hanging around the station because they've got to go from here to there to there to there, like to gather their gear to get out on the road. We want that effective and efficient process. We also want good relationships, so if the detectives need to work with the administration, or if they're running evidence, that there's a good working relationship so that the movement around the building and the way the department is operating is efficient and effective as possible. That just cuts everybody's time down for operations, and it makes a more effective day for folks that are working in the building.
It sounds like you're well on your way to having the program of needs, call it whatever, needs programs or program of needs that are required, so you're well on your way into that.
I got one question.
Yes, sure.
Just kind of curious, maybe you could help me. I know you said you don't like basements, but could you put parking underneath?
You're still dealing with the same issue going down, but yes, sorry.
I'm just kind of curious. I know you were trying to just say like it would be hard to put the offices or whatever, but I see a lot of parking garages in Boston, they're underneath.
They are.
And just a question. I mean, you guys know better than I do, but I was just kind of curious.
There are challenges that result of doing that. There are different challenges than if it's an occupied space below. It's still the excavation, it's still the material that we need to deal with. You'll see in Leominster, right, that's one where the site helped us, and we actually utilized an elevated building. Now, a little bit of a story with Leominster, the building was in floodplain. If we put a basement level in there, it was going to be in the
Right.
floodplain. So we put the building up on stilts. Lo and behold, they had the miraculous 100-year storm where the levee broke and that whole area flooded, to the point where they actually had fish in the parking lot when it dried out.
Right before they occupied the building.
Right before they occupied the building. The only areas that received damage from that flood was about 16 inches to 2 feet in the stair towers that were bringing everybody up. That was it. A whole bunch of instances that resulted. But that's an instance where, yes, parking was effective, and they used that area under the building to park the cruisers. So now they're taking care of ease of the officers getting into the cruisers and not having to clean them in a snowstorm or a weather event to get out on the road.
That was just my idea, that's,
Yep.
but,
We
you know.
look for all those opportunities.
Okay.
Where it's effective and efficient and with the overall end budget in line. That's
Good. Thank you.
Uh, Setting up a meeting or a tour for the committee. Maybe two options. If you might do that, chief, and then either get back to Jamie or I, and we'll get it out to everybody and let them know that one of those two dates. A lot of the committee knows everything. And they're every day, but there's some of us that hopefully haven't been.
Hopefully won't be going there.
And hopefully won't be. Yeah, if we could just set up sooner rather than later, because I would think we'd want to get in there before, obviously.
True.
Some of these other things. Kevin, anything from your standpoint?
Yeah, microphone.
Yeah.
The only thing is that I've also been in touch with National Grid. I was going to bring, my contact was Eileen Barrett for new construction and working with the utility company as far as going net zero. They may have some great input with site analysis as well. Last minute, she couldn't make it, but I'm sure she'll be at the next one, and I think it'd be great to just keep her in the loop. And I can share her contact info to CHA and KVA.
Perfect. Thanks, Kevin.
Thanks, Kevin.
I had
Chief?
just one more thing, when you guys are doing that satellite view, can you include the ability, like 30 years from now, when we had no idea, because we don't have a crystal ball, and there's 15,000 more people living in town than we expected, if we were to put an addition on, how that would end up changing the landscape design, the parking, et cetera, to see what site might be the most viable if that was to become for future expansion?
That's kind of when.
It might already be in there, I'm not sure, but.
When we were talking about the Parmenter being that, Goldilocks scenario, where it's kind of the right mixture where it gives you that future ability, as opposed to the Davis Thayer, where it looks like it's gonna work at a very high level right now, and that's where that additional data research, putting everything into the matrix, so it's there in a black and white and an unbiased look at everything, so that, again, having done this enough times, looking at that one, it will work today. It's kind of the scenario that you're in right now. It'll work today. What does it give you for the future? And is it a great solution for today, or is it just it's gonna get you by solution today? And that's where we wanna have that very candid conversation of, hey, could we make this one work? Absolutely. Here's some of the cons. Some of the cons is, that unknown future of 20, 30, 40 years down the road, what does that mean for the building if the department's gotta grow, if, whatever's happening, I just can't think of things right off the top of my head at the moment, but if you have to expand any area in particular with training, locker, patrol, evidence, because you've got an influx of that, whatever that means, and how does that work?
Jamie, anything else?
Not for me. I think we'll try to get the website filled out. We'll try to get the dates worked out throughout the summer. I think it'll probably be, because we got budget meetings and there'll just be like conflicts and weekends. We'll try to get the site visits and 3 or 4 forums spread out through probably the summer, June, July. We'll probably try to set up a committee meeting with this group probably again, after we get all that built out and when we really have a schedule to kind of do a promo, if you will. And I don't see any other work that the committee needs to do now for at least a couple months, especially because
That was
it's
gonna
budget.
be my
It's
question.
really budget
is,
season
when
for
do
us.
you need
Yeah.
us? When do you need us again? And, you know, I agree with you. There's really not a whole lot for us to do over the next few months,
Yeah.
based upon what I'm hearing and where you are. You've got a lot of information and a lot of work to do with that information before you need input before you'll need more input from us as a building committee.
Yeah, I think that that's right. I just want to note Megan Benson just raised her hand if,
Oh, okay.
in case you want to,
Megan, you want to unmute yourself?
she's getting let in now. There she is.
Are you there, Megan?
Hey there. Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can
Megan.
now.
Perfect, thank you. So I don't know, you mentioned at the beginning of the meeting that if people wanted to speak, so I'm not sure if it's a public forum, so I figured I'd try.
Sure.
It's fine? Okay,
All of these are
Great.
public meetings, so never hesitate.
Awesome. Thank you. So I have a few questions. I guess I'll start with the first one. So in terms of the Parmenter site, is it a done deal that Parmenter can be used for this based on the deed, and the Parmenter family's wishes, all of that?
Megan, I'll let Jamie, either one of us can answer that, but go ahead, Jamie.
So, yes, the deed does not have any restriction on it about the future use of that facility. That parcel was obviously intended 75, 78 years ago to be for the school, but the school lawyers, the town attorney, we've all read the deed. There is no restriction in there legally for the schools to dispose of that property through a disposition process, which they've already completed, and transition that property to be recorded by the town as town property. So the issue is, I think, more of a, one that's kind of just more rooted in kind of town history, where there's some articles about how generous the Parmenter family was. They donated this land, but just like any piece of land and or really any building, the building was never going to be used forever. And there really was no, I don't think, thought, and this is very common, where a lot of properties that are donated like this, unless it's open space, Chapter 97, and some other parcels, oftentimes when the family makes a donation like that, especially 100 years ago, 75 years ago, they were donating it for a schoolhouse back then, and they don't not necessarily think about what may be used down the line. That does not mean that the town of Franklin can't honor the Parmenter name or the family. That does also not mean, as the consultant spoke a few moments ago, it's a large site. And I think I've been very public and very transparent about this for a long period of time, that if the Parmenter site ends up being the most advantageous place, there's probably going to be another 14, 15 acres on that site. And as part of this process, we'll probably survey the property, do test pits and some other things that we would normally do to see where any wetlands restrictions are there any underground restrictions, are the soils, okay, and stuff like that, Megan. So I hope that answers your question, but the deed, there is absolutely no prohibition on the transaction that the school committee made a couple months ago.
The only statement in the deed was that within 3 years,
Right.
a school had to be built on that property, on that piece of property. So that was the stipulation. A school was built in the first 3 years, and after that, there's nothing else in the deed.
Okay,
And the chair makes
All
a
right.
great point, actually, Megan. One more point is, there was no clawback provision in the deed that if the town didn't build the schoolhouse, that it resorted back to the Parmenter family, or some other clawback that said, oh, if this didn't happen, we're gonna take back that deal. So I think back in 1949, it was like
It was a good
guaranteed.
year, by the way.
it was guaranteed that they were building the school, and as part of that acceptance, they also passed the funding for that school. So there was no way the schoolhouse was not gonna be built within those 3 years.
Right. No, I understand that. I think the general, just an added note there is like, when a typical resident reads through that deed, they might think it was intended for educational purposes. And I guess, maybe by the letter of the law, that is not necessarily the case. But based on the history of the Parmenter family and all of that, it seems that a lot of people do have that understanding. But that was just my first question, to kind of clear that up, to see if that is kind of, it's not even an issue anymore, and that it's official that the Parmenter School can be used for this site. My next question has to do with the current police station. So considering that the expansion, slash renovation of that is not off the table, I'm wondering what's being done just to continue to check on the viability of that location. There's talk about creating a 3-story structure, things like that. So what's being done to see if that current location can still be used?
Sure. So Megan, we've looked at this before on the current site. You can't go horizontally any other direction. And I think when you look at the parking requirements, the tower requirements, the radio, when you go inside the building during one of the open houses, I hope you'll join us, you'll see just how constrained the space is inside. Going vertical and going up, we'll look at that. My point with the current station is, I just want to do our due diligence to see exactly what that facility may or may not be used for, not just if it was used still as a police station, but also maybe as a satellite station, because one of the things I have, and the chief and I have talked about this, is it's right next to the high school, and ultimately that complex is going to still maintain the heart and soul of Franklin for decades and decades beyond. The middle school, the football stadium, the fireworks, the gatherings. The police department has a pretty meticulous safety plan around and security plan for big events like that. So does that, because it's next to the high school for safety for that complex, does the police station have a use, even in the current state, to be there for a satellite area for the 495 traffic as things grow in the future? So we're just looking at that as a satellite spot, and it may be an ancillary piece of the puzzle on ultimately deciding where the full headquarters would go.
Okay, all right, so that's good to know. So the idea of using that as the full headquarters is off the table?
It's highly unlikely.
Okay, all right. Thank you for that clarification. I had emailed on February 4th just to see if that was still being evaluated. And you had mentioned it was. So this is good to know that, it's really not anymore. And the only option for the current place would be for a satellite type station, which kind of brought me to my next question, which is what you've already touched on, is the student population. The vast majority of students being 0.3 miles from the current location versus, I think I looked it up and it was over 2 miles to the Parmenter location, using that as an example. And that's a big difference. When you think of major, things that we don't want to think of, but things that are more likely to happen in terms of, a major event or a major police response needed, it's likely could be at, the Oak Street High School complex. So it seems in a way not super intuitive to move it, from 0.3 miles, you could be there super fast across town. So that's one thing I was wondering if just that was considered in this planning and looking at viability of the other locations.
Chief.
Hi, Megan, it's Chief Lynch.
Hi, Chief.
Hi. So one of the things is, we don't, typically, the officers are not at the station. The station is the base of where they'll do their report writing, they have their lockers, they get, they change, they get dressed,
Yep.
they get in their cruisers. And then they go out in their cars and they cruise around. So, yes, during the day, there might be a few extra, officers at the station, maybe some of the detectives, some of the administrative personnel. But number one, the type of things you're talking about that nobody wants to talk about can happen anywhere at any time.
Yep,
There was just
of
a
course.
fire, that occurred on Peck Street, and within 20 seconds, one of the officers was there and was able to confirm that it happened, because they weren't at the station, they were in their sector, patrolling, and just happened to be, in the area. Similar thing happened the other day when we had an incident up at Dean College, and a young man ended up suffering a medical emergency. So really, where the station is located isn't detrimental. So
Okay.
moving it from where it is, I do agree that I think I'd like to be somewhere near the center of town, only because I know there's a lot of people who would like to see us somewhere near the center of town. And when I say the center of Franklin, to me, that's Stobart's to the Gabino Bridge. That is the center of Franklin.
Right.
Is my opinion. Just the way our town is set up and the transient nature of society today, with motor vehicles and everything else, so. I hear what you're saying, but I'd like to think that no matter where something might have happened, and our response times are very good, that somebody would be there in short order, including the administrative staff and anyone that, regardless of where the station would be coming in shortly behind the other
Right.
officers that show up first.
Right, okay, of course. And then actually just to, kind of touch back on what you said about the fact, like the whole idea is, right, ideally patrolmen are on patrol, right, or men or women, right? The patrol officers are out and about. Can you touch on the need for more space as it is in terms of building and parking and things like that? Because kind of the scenario you had just explained is that no one's at the police station anyway, right? Who's on duty? They, for the most part, if they're patrolling, they're out and about. So in terms of the needs for this new building, and, just to touch on that, what is creating the need for more parking, more space, those types of things?
Yeah, so I'm not saying the patrol officers that, the patrol division personnel that work at patrol are out and about, so aren't the SROs, and so forth.
Right.
They're in the schools, when they're on duty as well. But the building itself, so the building right now is 10,000 square feet. Okay, it was
Yep.
built in 1991, and we had 31 full-time staff, 31 full-time officers and 1 full-time civilian. Today, we have 58 sworn personnel and 5 full-time civilian personnel. So we've almost doubled, more than doubled, the number of people that are
Right.
working in the same space. There has been no construction or new square footage added to that building in the 34 years that it's in existence. There is, because you can't, because it's surrounded by wetlands. There's no
Right.
place to do it. Closets are no longer closets, they are offices. When you
Right.
come to the
Yep.
station, you will walk around through the hallways and you will see, thank God I'm really tight with the fire chief, you're gonna see a lot of file cabinets and other things that now house certain things that don't belong, there's certain things like papers and
Right.
things like that that are housed there, and then there's some of, extra storage for our tasers and other equipment that would be in the armory, but it can't fit in the armory because of the number of officers we have. We need to store the extra firearms, the ammunition, et cetera. So we're out of office space. We have no
Yep.
storage space whatsoever. We don't have enough parking existing wise. Our classroom only has enough space with chairs and tables for 18 people. I just basically said there's no way for us to ever have a department-wide, full department meeting. We can't even do the training that we normally do now. We had to use the fire department's EOC, or the Emergency Operations Center at headquarters on West Central Street, because we cannot fit half of our department at one time to do behavioral health training and other trainings that we do when we split the department in half. The lockers
Okay.
are 17 inches wide by 70 inches long by 17 inches deep. I would like to, I'm sure these gentlemen are looking at me right now, and basically, those are high school lockers. Those are not lockers meant for the type of equipment that the officers carry today, including, there is no power in the locker room, zero. Almost half the equipment that they carry and stuff that I've made sure that we can purchase for them is rechargeable, being their portable radios, their flashlights. One day we'll have body cameras, and they will need to be, charged as well. The technology in the building is insufficient. It's 34 years old. It's not the type of things, like, the gentleman just said, we're looking at a facility that's 37,000 square feet to be able to house what we have now and what we're looking for in the future. I'd love to have a classroom that's not only big enough, but it wouldn't just be a classroom, it'd be a community room. There's not a lot of community space that different folks can use for different groups and so forth. Right off the lobby, people could use it, but it would be difficult. It's impossible right now to have a classroom that would invite the public to show up, as well as all of the officers who are working and any of the other officers that would come in for that, because we just don't have the room. And it limits us, because we probably train more than any other department in this entire area, probably Metro West,
Right.
easily.
Yep.
Because of the way
Yeah.
our schedule is, and they owe us the time, and the way that we use it for training. And we're highly trained. But it'd be great to be able to offer training, and I'm talking real expensive training, in which we would get free seats because we offered it to all the communities surrounding us and then some. But we don't have the facility to be able to do that.
Okay.
Those
Yeah,
are just some
no,
of the
I
things.
appreciate-
This will all come out during the video. It will definitely come out during the, tours if anyone was to come down. I've been with the department for 29 years. I showed up 5 years after the building was built. We were running out of space then. It's just, but we were the fastest growing town in the 1990s, and I don't think too many people really knew about that. And those that did, they don't live in Franklin anymore because they're loaded.
All right, thank you.
All right, I
Anything else,
appreciate
Megan?
that. Oh, yep, that context, it's very much appreciated. I think that it's helpful to other folks too, just kind of wondering where this is coming from, all of that. And then, my last question is, you guys talked about timing a little bit in terms of when the open houses might start to begin, when, there might be 4 to 5, all of that. In terms of a, kind of like a debt exclusion vote, is there any timing for that? Even general, are we thinking fall,
Well,
spring?
Through Mr. Chairman, I'd say, I think one of the listed items that I'm gonna put on here that ask them to put on the website is like, the timeline for these. You do the 6 months I'm making this up, 6 months public outreach. Meanwhile, they're doing some of the site evaluation, they're looking around town. You get to the fall, you maybe start getting into design. I think within 2 years, I think I said in my recent memo, or it will be coming out next week, Megan,
Yep.
you're really looking at both the police station in Remington Jefferson, the remodel there. You're looking at 2 to 3 years for probably the financing piece of that. You've done this 5 times, Mr. Chairman, I think.
I would say you're
2
in
to
that,
3.
you're in that 2-year time frame, I would think.
So we
Especially
wouldn't be
where-
voting on it until,
Yeah, probably not for a couple years.
Yes. You're probably
Okay.
looking at 1.5 to 2 years minimum before it would go to the residents as a ballot question.
okay, so 1.5 to 2 years from now.
Yep.
That's, okay. And then, Mr. Helen, can you just quick remind me, only because you mentioned it, the Remington Jefferson, do we have a number for that? It might have been included in the last,
We had we've had 2 numbers for it, and we've had to authorize them and rescind them because everything's changed so much the last 5 years and continuing to change. But right now, you're looking at 8 to 10 million. So the estimate of this building was a little more expensive than we probably thought. But I know numbers get thrown out there and it's tough, but I think they were looking at maybe the 25 or 30 million range. We had maybe said 40. But a lot of that, we've been making up these numbers during 12% inflation and, you know, they're bringing in materials, we got tariffs coming in, we don't, you know, there's so many changing pieces, which I know you understand, Megan, but just for the record, if people watch this later on,
Yeah.
you know, we're constantly adjusting those numbers, but you're looking at probably a solid 10 million for Remington Jefferson, and there's also a roof at Horace Mann that will have to get repaired at some point
Right.
as well. So those are the three big capital items in the next 5 or 6, 7 years.
And Megan, it
Okay.
only makes sense for us to at least look at the possibility of combining those projects into one and going out
Right.
with one debt exclusion, as well as bonding,
Yeah.
bonding those projects basically as one, to get the best bang for our buck.
Interesting, okay. And would you kind of show the police station as this versus,
Oh,
like
yeah,
you would
of course.
differentiate? Yeah.
Yes, yes. The
Okay.
short answer to your question is
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, I know where you're going, yeah.
Right, okay. All right, well, thank you. I appreciate everybody's information and time and being able to ask these questions.
You're very welcome. Thank you, Megan, for tuning in. Any other questions? Mr. DeLoco?
On the Parmenter site and the deed, has anyone reached out to Ricky or Bobby Parmenter?
I've talked to Robin.
All right. Because I think that would be very important if we could get these people in here to feel what they feel, because, I mean, honestly, he was friends of my father, they were only a year apart. I think if you look outside the box, in 1935, he graduated from Franklin High, then went on to college and became an accountant. In 1935, there weren't many people that graduated high school, not even thinking that they were going to college, right?
Yeah.
So I think the Parmenter family wanted that as education. But if we, you know, if Ricky and Bobby say, if we honor them, then that's good. I understand that. Otherwise, yeah, we can do it, but morally, it's not right, in my eyes. That's,
And
That-
I don't disagree with you, Bobby. I believe that the Parmenter name needs to stay on that property in one way, shape, or form. I know Jamie and I have talked about, you know, it could be the Franklin Police Station at the Parmenter Complex.
so whatever, if they like that, then
But
that's.
still recognizing
Right.
the Parmenter name, because bottom line is, they donated all of that land.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that's all.
Super quickly, just so you know, in case you want to encourage them, a member of the Parmenter family came into the office
Just a week ago.
a couple weeks ago, and I didn't hear about it, but the staff put it on my calendar. And then I said, oh, wow. I said, one of the Parmenter family members must have just called up and said, you know, Jamie's available, so the staff put it on, which is fine. And then he came in like a week later and canceled it. So if any of you know, I'm happy to meet with the Parmenter family.
I think we're.
I think.
And I also, and so if you can do that, Bobby, that'd be great. And just again, to remind people,
Yeah.
at some point, 10, 15, 20, 30 years from now, at some point, you are gonna need another elementary school or another school site.
Oh, so
And
that's the
we've,
case, too.
now that these guys are hearing this, I mean, they've heard it from me already, but when they do the test pits and they do the soil testing and they look at the surveying of the site and they look at the wetlands way over in the corner, and then I think there might be a spring somewhere underground that's, you know, tapped into the well, that is where they get the water for Parmenter, old school. We're gonna look at that, because I've already committed to the superintendent and the school committee. Last year, as part of the MOU, I put it right in there. I said, this site is gonna be evaluated for a likely municipal school use in the long run. We probably won't be here when they need it at that point.
Right, I get it.
But, you know, at some point, you know, 30 years from now, you've at least don't have to go buy a piece of property 30 years from now, and the price of that property is probably
Good, I
$20
guess
million per acre. You can say you've already got a site for a school, and as part of the process, you could say, as you're naming the station or the complex, if this is a future school site, we, as the council, would like to see the Parmenter name move on. There's a lot of options here, there really are. Thank you.
You all set?
Good, I'm good.
Any other questions or comments? Guys, anything to add? Jamie?
Nope.
I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Non-debatable. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, one and all.